Hello and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns podcast for August 1st, 2025. My name is Tom Luongo. We have a lot to talk about, and we do, and it's going to be fun today because I have a great pleasure of catching up with my good friend Alex Krainer, who I haven't spoken to in nearly probably a little over a month since the last time we did Crypto Riches Show. Alex, how are you? How you been?
Doing really well, Tom. Thank you for the invite. Good to be with you again. And as always, warm greetings to your viewers and listeners from Croatia this time.
Excellent. So are you back home, or you're visiting
Just
family?
on a semi-vacation, my kids, it's school vacation, so take advantage to spend some time with the family. For the first time in 5 years, I've actually done something vacationy. I went on a little sailboat and we just hopped from island to island for a week, which was really nice.
I, yeah, it's funny, Alex, you say that. I I remember when we were up in Calgary, and I remember were at dinner like multiple nights. You're like, I gotta run. I can't go back to the bar or go back to the hotel and chat because I've got work to do. And it was like 11 o'clock, and I looked at you at one point. I'm like, Alex, it's time to slow down, my friend. Like, seriously, I used to work like you and I know what that looked like. But when I was in ride or die mode back when we first started Gold Goats and Guns, I literally worked 7 days a week, 13 to 15 hours a
Oh
day.
yeah, yeah, that's
And,
good. Jesus, that's my life, Tom.
right. I
That's
know.
my life. So yeah,
And
this was so deliberate because I was feeling myself on the verge of a burnout actually
Mhm, mhm,
at some point, and a few people actually warned me, you don't want to do that because you're gonna have a very hard time putting yourself back together. So I thought, I need to like cut myself off a little bit at least for a week
mhm.
and take, well, vacation. It means I did 2 to 3 hours of work a day, and the
Right.
rest I was cut off. And it was actually brilliant because we went hopping from island to island, of which there are
Mhm.
about 1,000 in Croatia. There's about 1,000 islands, so there's no shortage of where we're gonna go.
Right.
And it was really nice because some of these islands are it's like a world in itself. It's its own place. It's like time stopped at some point, 70s, 80s, 90s, I don't know when, but it
Sure.
so we hit this island called Ij, right? It's spelled IZ with a little V accent on top of the Z,
Mhm.
IZH, let's say. And the place it's a tiny island, and the place is famous for uh the Chris Novoselic, the bass player from Nirvana,
Right.
is from there and he lives there now. And we spend the day there. And first thing I noticed is there's no bars on any houses anywhere. The windows, even on the ground floor, they're just windows. They're open. There's no bars
Mhm.
on doors. There's like nothing. And then in late afternoon, evening hours, until late, late in the evening, until practically 11 midnight, the place is chock full of children. So it's like children everywhere. I thought, like, gosh, and like free roaming children, there's no parents taking care of them. They're just like going everywhere by themselves. And I thought, these people really feel safe here. Isn't that strange? And then the next day we go out for a coffee and asked one of the locals, like, how much police is there on this island? And you know, the number is zero. There is no police on the island.
Right.
So I thought, these people feel perfectly safe here, yet there is no police there.
Mhm.
And it made me think because the way we gradually lose our freedoms in the West,
Mhm.
little by little, inexorably for decades now,
Yes.
is they always do stuff for our safety.
Mhm.
You know, we're going to force you to wear a face mask for your safety. We're going
Mhm.
to force you to take a vaccine for your safety.
Yes.
We're going to disarm you for your safety. And
Yeah.
on and on and on and on and on. And then we're going to stick you into a 15-minute city for your safety. And we're
Hmm.
going to force you to have a digital ID for your safety. And then we're going to force you to use CBDCs for your safety because guess what? The criminals and the terrorists, they fund their activities by using cash. So we're going to eliminate cash
Hmm.
for your safety
Yeah.
and so forth. You see
On
where
and
this
on,
is
on and
going.
on and on and on and on. Yeah, no, and
And you live
from
in
a
a police state under surveillance. The cameras are everywhere. Your smart devices keeping track of everything you do.
mhm,
They're listening to every word you say, and so forth, all for our safety. And then, like you find yourself on this island where safety is not even the remotest concern of everybody. Their concern is just chilling, and the children are just playing.
mhm,
And the whole rhythm of life is slow is not the right word. It's not that it's slow. It's that the scheduling of activities is subordinated to the requirements of life rather than the inverse.
right,
Like life is subordinated to the requirements of your scheduling. And everybody feels perfectly comfortable and safe. Well, I shouldn't say comfortable because I don't know. Maybe there are people there that struggle with this and that. Who knows? But nobody feels unsafe.
right,
And nobody's worried like, oh my God, where's my kid? I don't, my kid's not in my visual field.
right,
Everybody's like, whatever, the kid's somewhere on the island. They'll come back when they're hungry, or
right, right. Yep.
And so that really made me ponder. That really made me think. And I wrote on my blog, on my Substack, a few articles, I think, on the whole question of freedom. What the hell is it?
Hmm.
And when you're there, when you're in it, then you realize,
That's what it looks like.
yeah, this kind of feels awful like that, like stepping outside of the matrix.
Yeah.
Anyway, I
Yeah.
thought I thought I'd share that because, all our discussion kind of vaguely revolve around these things because, we pay attention to the monetary issues, to the government issues, to all of these things. Because why? Because we want a better life, because we want to be free, because we want to be prosperous and so on. But we are face to face with this giant, ugly juggernaut
Hmm.
that is like penning us in tighter and tighter and tighter, all in the name of our safety.
Hmm.
But safety isn't really an issue. I mean, like if you live on an island where there's zero police and nobody feels unsafe,
Hmm.
we got something wrong. Something got inverted on us
Yeah,
along
no,
the
it's,
way.
it's yeah, no, this is a great discussion, Alex. It's taking me back to the days when I really spent a lot of time thinking about and trying to really hone in on all the consequences of what you would consider quote unquote the good parts of libertarianism and freedom and all and the individualist ideology and and then there's the weird purity spiraling portion of it, but it's this is that um it took me back to thinking about um what are laws, why do we have them, what do they do, at a kind of functional level, at a very practical level. What's a law state for you? It states the limit at which you're allowed to arrest somebody else. Everybody thinks of it from the top down. What are we stopping people from doing? Which you have to think about is from the opposite perspective. It's the limit. And the easier way to look at it is to say the easiest way is to talk about pollution, for example. Like the law says you can have, no more than, 1 part per billion lead in your drinking water. Okay, great. That means that anybody can pollute up to 1 part per billion. There may be people out there who want half a part per billion. There may be people out there who are okay with poisoning themselves with 2 parts per billion. But at the end of the day, we wrote a rule. Now you can make the argument we have to come up with some practical limit, yada, yada, yada. But when you start to use that, when you define that limit, and then you can write a law, and then you empower lawyers, and then you empower cops, and then you empower people to enforce that law, all of a sudden now they become the focus of the law and not the intention of the law itself, which was to stop people from drinking poisoned water. We lose the
Yep,
mission creep. We
yep,
lose the
yep.
point of the mission. And so much of what you and I talk about and what I try to remind everybody about when I'm on the microphone is that's what we're dealing with here, right? Everybody wants to hear what we have to say about what's going to happen, tomorrow, what Trump said yesterday, or this, that, or anything else. But that's not what the goal is. The mission is to highlight where we've gone wrong as a society and where those what I like to call power gradients exist to separate the people from their rights by inserting middlemen in that get to take all the power, arrogate all the wealth, and then tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And and then when you get an object lesson of, oh, I get to sit here on an island off the coast of Croatia with zero cops because you basically found the Croatian version of the Shire, where if you look from Tolkien, like the sheriffs in the Shire, like there were a couple of them and no one really listened to them. If you go back and read Tolkien, he talks about it. It's like the sheriff is just this guy that kind of goes around and collects any of the problems, the complaints that people have with each other, sits them down at the pub, and they hash it out over a pint. That's old, the
Yeah.
old English, and that's the metaphor there. It's the same kind of thing. If there are going to be conflicts between people, you know, it's going to happen, and what we should be figuring out is conflict resolution should be as individually based as possible and situationally based as possible in the moment between the people who are there. They get to determine what is and is not aggression or crime or this
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that, and the community
Exactly.
can then reinforce what the where that idea lies, right? So might have one big curmudgeon. I might be the curmudgeon and says, yeah, get off my lawn, right? That guy. I may be that guy. And you may be the guy who was like, look, it's just my kids. Did they harm anything? And then we do this thing. And then I complain to the sheriff. You and I get together and we have to hash it out. And the community stands around and goes, Tom, you're being a dick. Like Alex isn't, hurt, Alex's kids aren't hurting anything. Yeah, this is what we're gonna do here. So you're not wrong because it's your property, but at the same time, dude, chill the fuck out. You know,
Yeah.
and and I'm going to bear the social consequence of treating your kids badly by everybody not talking to me. And then
Yeah.
eventually
Yeah.
over
Well,
time
that's
it all
exactly
smooths out.
it. That's exactly it. So you see, the reason why, well, I thought about this, and I thought the reason why everybody's so chilled out with like their kids being somewhere on the island, whatever, with their friends, playing, is because um, if somebody harmed a child, the locals, the parents, would find them and beat them to a bloody pulp.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody dares. If somebody broke into somebody else's house, the same would happen. So that's why you don't need bars on your windows, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't need police for that. And it's not like every week somebody gets beat to a bloody pulp. It's understood, so nobody even does it. Nobody crosses the limits, which brings you back to how do we even get along? We get along because we've got the natural law baked into our system. It's hardwired in us. And it's a very simple thing. It says act with honor and do no harm. And so you know what it means to act with honor in everyday life, and you
Mm-hmm.
know that you shouldn't harm your friends, your neighbors, your people around you. And so nobody does.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody understands that if somebody does do that, they're going to, ruin the things for everybody, not just for themselves, and they're going to pay the consequences. Whereas, like where we are in the Western world now, we have a kind of a two-tier justice system where if you're a certain class of person, you can practically count with impunity no matter what you do. And if you're an ordinary person, you might end up with a prison sentence for shoplifting and like a stiff one.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
No, no,
that's
you're
another
right. San
discussion, but
Francisco used to call this narco tyranny, rules for thee and not for me. Um,
right. Yeah.
and what's important in all of that you just touched on, Alex, is that the idea is that um, you know as you know you create that limit of aggression that people are allowed to have, and then people can hide behind the limit of that aggression. So you write the law. I think you and I were talking about this before we started the before we hit record. I used the example and it's the example that I've been using for a long time because I used to be a bench chemist and analyzing people's water. So pollution, for example, is a perfect example of how you know how left style statists will argue that we have to regulate the society. I've run into this many times living just north of Gainesville, Florida. I used to do libertarian politics in Gainesville, Florida, with open communists sitting on the commission. And so, perfect example of you write a law that says we can't have that. There's the upper limit of lead in your drinking water is 1 part per billion, or something along those lines. Now, let's make it 5 parts per billion because that's actually dangerous, right? So you write a law that's that level for whatever reason at the time. It could be, for technological reasons, we can't see it down that low or whatever. But there it is. You write the law, and now all of a sudden, you may not want to, have 5 ppb in your drinking water issued by the city. I might be good with 10 because I don't care, because I hate myself and I don't care. And I like neurological damage. So, the person, what the rule does is said, well, if I'm the guy dumping lead into the wastewater, and I'm the guy working the wastewater treatment plant. Don't even care if all I care about is that the number comes up below 5, even though 4.9 is still just as dangerous as 5.1, right? So now you've empowered an entire group of people, right? You've empowered the bureaucrat and the analyst that used to be me, that you give them make work jobs to test all this water, and then you empower the lawyers and the cops and the county commissioners and the water management districts and the state legislatures and the governor and all of these, and you set in motion off of one little rule this whole chain of events, everything that you just described, all in the name of safety. But what you've done is you've defined a limit of how badly people can dump water, to dump pollutants into each other's water. Okay. And we all look at it from the top down. Oh, we're limiting the amount of damage people do because collectivists in general like to hit you with fear, whether they're right wing collectivists or left wing collectivists. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They want to keep you in a state of fear of the other guy doing something terrible, as opposed to looking at it from the ground up from the other side, which is how much can I get away with? And and that's the situation. And then they write rules that say you have to clean the water up, you can't dilute it out. I mean, and then it just becomes this entire mess. And then we wind up with the regulatory state that we have today over all of these things. And the one last thing, and then I'll pop it over to you. You opened with safety. How many times have I heard Mike Rowe, the American commentator and TV host, say, on Dirty Jobs, when he was doing the show Dirty Jobs, and he was just highlighting what these guys did for a living, shoveling pig shit, cleaning out sewers, this, that, and everything else. He said, we had a rule on the set: safety third, not safety first, safety third. Why? Because we have to get the shot. And we have to tell the show, and if we make safety the overriding concern, we're not going to be able to produce a television show. And so his rule, and he keeps using that today. We are obsessed with safety culture.
Yes,
and it's interesting. So
yeah, okay. So contrast. I live in Monaco, right? When I'm not on vacation. And so Monaco is in the south of France, and south of France is, France. It's all these rules of safety go by accretion, and it's frustrating to see it happen because I did see it happen. So 30 years ago, when I came there, I became a member of a local sailing club because, you can go to the beach, but you could have a locker there, a changing room, a shower, and you could use, kayaks and windsurfs and stuff like that. So I've been, buying membership in the club for a good part of the last 30 years. And in the beginning, I could just, let's say, come to the club one day, pick up a kayak,
Mm.
and go wherever the hell I wanted to go with a kayak. It was like go east, west, south, out, whatever. And then little by little, they started like, oh, you can't go east. You can only go west. Why? Oh, well, it's for safety reasons because there's bigger boats and uh, there's
Mm.
helicopters that land nearby, so you can't go there. Okay, fine. And then one day they're like, I go off, and the guy from the club's running after me. He's like, you have to have the safety. How do you call it? The life vest. You have to have the life vest. I'm
Mhm.
like, excuse me? I've been doing this for like last 15 years. I never used the life vest. I'm still alive. Why do I have to? Oh, it's the new law. It's the new law. Of course, the law is for my safety,
Yes.
but how annoying. And so it's just like that, one thing after another. And I wonder, like, how does that even happen? Like, who spends time thinking, how can I make people more safe? Because if they go in the sea, they might drown. So I want to prevent them from drowning. So I'm going to force everyone
Mhm.
to wear a life vest. And so I've been, like you're going out on a kayak. Kayak itself is a flotation device, right? You don't
Right.
need another one. It would be
Right.
like walking around with the seat belt on, you know.
In a kayak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I thought, how does this happen? And I thought it must be coming from the academia. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Because then they will quantify how many people drowned last year and the year before and so on. And then maybe they can show that more and more people drown every year.
Mm.
And the reason why they drown is because they don't have a life vest.
Mhm.
And then they bring, like a bill to the how do you call it?
Parliament or the local
The
government or
parliament,
what.
the legislature.
Right. Mhm.
And they're like, so many people drowned, and we want to pass this law to prevent people from drowning. It's always about saving lives. And then next thing you know, the next year you have a law that says like when you go out on a kayak, you must have a life vest with you.
Yep.
And yeah, and then they explained to me you can't. It's not like we have to police the law, but if something happens, we're liable because now it's tied to the whole insurance thing.
Yes,
Anyway,
that's
it's
no, you're hitting on it right there. That actually, there's two reasons. Like, as you were talking, I'm having to tell myself, don't interrupt Alex. Let him finish his point. Let him finish his point because I guess there's two things that are really important. So I want to jump in here because I've been thinking about this stuff forever and a day. You're hitting on like these are all big trigger points for me to like get this stuff out of my system. No, seriously, two things. One, yes, insurance is very important. It is important part of this, right? I've argued this with classic American liberals of this type for a long, long time. I used to have like all of my friends in Gainesville were coming out of college were very much of this mindset, this kind of prevention principle mindset. Well, we have problems and we have solutions in search of problems is really what it comes down to. They think they're problems in search of solutions and they want to prevent bad things from happening in order to stop the contagion effect of this leads to this, leads to this, leads to that. So we have car insurance that's mandated in the United States. And eventually,
yeah,
because it's mandated, therefore, now the insurance companies get to turn to the legislature. So, in order to get everybody's insurance premiums down, everybody needs to wear a seatbelt. Seatbelts are a good idea. I'm not telling you that wearing a seatbelt in your car isn't a good idea. But caveat emptor and all of that stuff. Helmet laws for motorcycle wearers, yada yada yada. And when you argue these points with people, they get they don't want to they think that's more important than everything else, and they decide that their priority of trying to prevent the downstream effect of their rising insurance costs is costing them an extra 50 cents a year. And therefore, they have the right in insurance, they have the right to tell you to wear your seatbelt. Because, and I'm like, no, you really don't. Because if we had an open market for insurance, car insurance, then that wouldn't be the case. But then we have socialized medicine and we have public hospitals, and that's putting pressure on the public hospitals. I'm like, yes. So maybe we shouldn't have public hospitals. Maybe we shouldn't have a healthcare system where the where anybody can just walk up to the emergency room at any time. I'm not saying we shouldn't, as a society, be rich enough to provide those services anyway, and we probably would. The problem is, of course, leads into the second problem. Why is everybody so worried about the money that we're not rich enough to be able to handle the natural ebb and flow of the 2% of people or 3% of people who can't pay to, when they get themselves in trouble? Why? Because we have a corrupt monetary system that's leeching all the
Yeah,
actual wealth out
bingo.
of
Yeah.
the fucking society. That's why. And everybody's getting poorer, and because everybody's getting poorer, they're becoming more anxious about these little costs and what my neighbor, and they care about what their neighbor is doing. On your little island of Ish, sorry, off the coast of Croatia, no one's worried about the insurance costs of a kid skinning his knee.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Exactly. And this I think that this is how they kind of slowly but surely inundate us with this safety culture
Yes.
because life is full of risk always.
Yes.
If you're gonna go play football outside, you might get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the children's playground, the child might get hurt.
Yep.
If they go riding a bicycle, they might get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And what of it? It's just part of life, right? We all went through it. But it's come to the point where, oh, if this activity might result in someone in harm, then we have to eliminate it. And then I don't know, in the United States, I lived in California.
Mm.
They tore out all the children's playground.
Yep.
All the children's play. I was like, what is this? Where's the playgrounds? They tore them out because children can get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, but if they play, they can get hurt. So what's your solution to prevent them from playing? That's your solution. And so, of course, then the next thing, they're all obese and they're all out of shape.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I
Oh,
think,
well, Alex, I'll tell you, and how crazy this idea is. I'll give you a perfect example of how crazy this stuff is. So when I built my house in 2002, I built my whole house out of pressure treated lumber because I was building on 2x6 stud walls. And, at the time, 2x6 stud walls were not normal. It was all 2x4 construction. So the cost of an unpressure treated 2x6 and a pressure treated 2x6 was $1. So if I spend an extra 5% in the cost of my house, I could basically termite proof the frame of my house, right? So I didn't spend $5 to $6 of a 2x6. I spent $7 a 2x6, and that was all CCA treated lumber. That's copper chromated arsenate. Now, that stuff plus southern yellow pine, which is what we build with here in Florida, which is like Douglas fir in terms of its properties. It's amazing stuff. It also drinks CCA as if it like lives on it. Like it loves that solution. So pressure treating those logs is easy. It's complete. And we live in a mold and termite infested Florida where everything rots. We banned our CCA treated lumber in America because of the EPA, because arsenic was the number one pollutant in the United States. Well, it's because we use arsenical style poisons everywhere as herbicides, as rat poison, arsenic is incredibly good at killing mold, fungus, vermin, all sorts of things, right? Um, and for protecting houses. So we went with this other stuff, which is basically copper, which is garbage. And when you go and, I always do post and beam construction, and when I went to build my addition, I'm getting to a point here. You'll see what I'm getting at in a second. I built my addition, and the addition off the house was I pulled a shed roof off and pulled in some, and then, laid some headers over 4x6s. When I went to cut the 4x6s the length, we had changed over to this ACQ garbage, and the center of the 4x6s were yellow, not green. Okay. They hadn't even been treated. So the outside of the post is treated, the interior of the post is untreated, and eventually those posts are going to rot out in some amount of time, and I'm going to have to replace them, and it's going to be ridiculous. I'm going to have to poor. I'm gonna have to redo it, right? That's what everything's being built with now. So all the childhood playgrounds, and you know why they did this? They did this because they were worried, and then the county of Alachua tore down all of the playgrounds in Gainesville and replaced all of them with new lumber, with new wooden posts, all treated with the new stuff because we got rid of the arsenic because they were worried that the kids were going to sit on the ground and eat and the arsenic leaches out of the post and then into the soil, and then the kids are going to eat the soil or they were going to chew on the things or whatever, even though these things are all like are treated with, like, the kids are not
Right.
going to do this stuff, right? Moreover, while I worked at UF for 5 years, the woman I worked for, the researcher I worked for, had a project out at Austin Carey Forest, just north of Gainesville, studying the leaching of copper chromated arsenate out of telephone poles that had been going on since the 1950s. Those poles have been out there since the 1950s, and we went out every quarter and sampled the water column and around these poles. And and there's no appreciable, it's like within 6 inches of the pole, and it doesn't go down and it didn't go down the water table, and all these fears and all these problems and solutions in search of problems. Still, we wound up with some political decision in the United States to ban CCA treated lumber, and now we can't. And now all of our houses are gonna, and all of our pole barns and all of our barns and everything else are all gonna rot out in 20 years, and we have to rebuild them all. It's like planned obsolescence for
Yeah.
wood based
Yeah.
building. It's insane. And we
Yeah.
had a perfectly good system with the right lumber and the right material and the right stuff, and we destroyed it all in the name of, and they sold it to us in the name of safety
Safety. Yeah.
for the
And
children.
again, and again, you had somebody who had to go out and show that, oh, this could be bad, and show like numbers, something,
Right.
uh,
Well, they just,
contrive a study that shows what
yes.
they do, what they wanted to do anyway. And and the result is that they foist some kind of a new law on you that nobody asked for.
Mm-hmm.
For Yeah, and you know
And
the
I remember the massive ad campaign for this stuff. It was massive, and it was
oh, so
so
it was
thoroughly
promoted, it was
industry.
marketing along with it as well.
So thoroughly, like the industry and the government spend so much of our tax money to propagandize us that the new yellow wood was just as good as the old green wood. This went on for years, and I'm like, I mean, we had a short term spike in black market lumber and pressure treated lumber in America
Right.
until the supplies ran out. Like it, now if I were ever to like tear my house down, I would salvage all that lumber and build a barn with it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't let
Right.
that stuff go. It's like precious now.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's insane.
Okay, well, I guess yeah, the thing I gathered on my sailing vacation is that we don't really need safety from the government.
No.
We are safe. Hmm. How about that?
Well, or how about this? We will not get back to regulating our behavior if you don't regulate people's behavior by banning behavior. You regulate behavior by having people go do things, find out that, oh, they're bad, get the object and physical lesson that, oh, that's bad, and then they learn not to do it again.
The
It's the first
FAFO,
rule of
right?
it's the first rule of parenting, right? Let's FAFO, fuck
It's
around and find out.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah,
It's the first rule of parenting. I
exactly.
mean, you're a dad. You've got what, three boys?
Two.
Two boys. I never remember if it was two or three. I have a girl. What are you supposed to do as a parent? You're supposed to, let them slowly learn how to do things and feel the
Exactly.
consequences of their actions so that they can learn discernment.
Exactly. And you find you learn really quickly that that's what they want. And it's not like they want it a little bit. It's intense. Like the minute they figure out that they can do something for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
they they really need to do it. And then if you like when they say like, "Hey, can I go to school by myself?"
Mm-hmm.
And if you say yes, oh my God, it's like Christmas. Now I'm gonna
Right.
go to school by myself. And yeah, it's like that all the time. And so I
Mhm.
think that's probably natural. And
Mhm.
for parents, if you don't feel like some sense of great danger,
Mhm.
then you kind of want to let them go. You want to let them go. You want to let them experience, like the whole adventure. Oh my God, I'm going to do this all by myself, unsupervised with my friends.
You're right. Right. Right.
And
Right.
the other day, my kid comes home at like 2 o'clock in the morning. He's 15. And I'm like, whoa, dude, where were you? And he's like, I was at the beach with my friends. I was like, you were at the beach at 2 o'clock in the morning? I was like, yeah. What were you guys doing? And he's like, we were fishing. I was like, okay. So
That was
did you
not the
catch
answer I
anything?
was expecting.
No, no, they were fishing. And I was like, okay, well, did you catch anything? And he's like, yeah, we caught a moray eel. I was like, all right. And what did you do then? He's like, well, we built a fire and we ate him. So, do you know? So can you imagine for a bunch of 15-year-olds, this was like a whole thing.
Yeah.
And isn't that better than keeping them indoors safe?
That's a rite of
Where,
passage.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For
And
me,
anyway,
no, for me, it was. I mean, I ran into this all the time. My mom. I was the last of four, and growing up in the '70s, where things were starting to get a little dicey. There's a reason, and I think I've said, I think I've mentioned this in the past, that there's a reason why we moved out of um, Long Island, where I was born. I was born on Long Island, and then, but my parents had already bought the property and were having the house built that that I wound up growing up in upstate New York, because my dad, the cop working in Brooklyn, was like, "Yeah, we're leaving, full stop," right? And so I'm born in February. We move up there in June as an infant, and I grow up in the suburbs in upstate New York, in a relatively dangerous place, because the whole place is like built out of the side of a mountain, and where the kids going to play, and like we're throwing rocks at each other because it only snows 4 months out of the year. So the other 8 months out of the year, we're throwing acorns and rocks at each other. We're having fights. We're building tree forts and all sorts of stupid shit, right? But my mom kind of tried to shelter me a little bit, and I was of that but she failed miserably. But when I finally got my driver's license, and I didn't get my driver's license until I was almost 18, for because I made a big mistake when I was 15, and and I didn't want to learn how to drive until I felt I was ready for it. But in the interim, I made some new friends. I became a musician, made some new friends, and we used to go out. I used to go out to my friends would pick me up. We go to band practice. We go over to his house, my friend's house. We play all night long, and then when we were done, we'd go to the diner in the local town, in the Greek diner in town. Now, I was the kid that was living at home. I did all my stuff at home. I listened to music at home. I watched movies. I didn't, and all of a sudden, I'm going out all the time,
uh-huh.
every night, right? And my mom was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm going out until 11. This is my junior and senior year, and I know she's like getting all PTSD, because this is the same arc that my oldest sister went through, and she eventually wound up running away from home for as right after high school, and so my parents have honest to God trauma over this, and fair enough,
Right, right.
fair cop, right? But I'm like, I finally like told her, I'm like, what are you doing like every night when you're going out? I'm like, well, one, we're just driving around and talking to each other, or we're going to the diner. There are nights when we would just try to get lost in where we were. We would just get to an intersection and flip a coin to either go left, right, or and then try to get lost. And we always wound up like in a road that we knew, and like on the backside of Middletown, New York, and going, all right,
Yeah.
let's drive back to town. Let's go to the diner and let's get some coffee until 3 o'clock in the morning, and then go to school the next day. This is what we were doing. And I'm like, Mom, if you're not sure, if you don't believe me, you can call the diner, and I'll be in that booth over there with those two boys drinking coffee and eating a poutine. Like, that's what we're doing.
Right.
Like, if you're worried about it, like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
all we're doing. because I actually have friends I can talk to that I like, and that we all have the same interests. And what are you doing? Just chatting. You know.
Yeah, interesting. That's what I used to do with my friends when I was that age. We would just hang out and talk.
Hmm.
That was the probably the central thing. And I imagine that's what young people feel very intensely that they need to do. Just socialize. That's it.
My daughter, since we live out in the middle of nowhere, and my daughter and all of her friends are kind of online, they sit in Discord all night chatting. While they might not even be playing a game together. They might not be doing like a group activity in a game. They may be like literally just each individually doing the thing with the headset on. And I hear her upstairs cackling until all hours with her friends doing exactly that, right? And then
Yeah.
and they play D&D, like tabletop D&D over Discord connection, and they have a blast. And then she comes downstairs every once in a while when she actually wants to get like real human contact, and she's like talking to, and then she comes downstairs and tells us what insanely stupid shit they did in their D&D game. And I'm like, because she knows I eat this stuff up, because because we all did, because Camille and I both gamed a lot when we were role played a lot when we were younger. um
Uh-huh.
so yeah, no, she would just tell us these stories, and I'm like, oh, that's hilarious. You guys, I want to play in your game. Like, that's hilarious. You guys are fun, but I would never want to, right? But never want to do so. But yeah, it's finding, as we're getting older, she's getting older. What I'm finding is that she's now realizing she's looking for opportunities to spend time with her parents in ways that she hasn't before, because she can feel that everything's about to change. And I'm like,
Right.
and I've been telling her, it would be fun if you came back to play World of Warcraft with us, even if it was just a couple of days a week, simply because you'll be in the chat channel with us. I can sit and chat with you. We can do the thing. You can be a different version of yourself. I get, and I'll police the boys and make sure they don't, say anything really dumb. Like, you know what I mean? Like that. So let's just go with it, because it's one of those things. As they get older, you're gonna, everybody's gonna feel that loss. And the worst thing you want to do is shelter them, that they don't have anything to
Yeah.
have any experiences to then, and have any ability to talk with you about when there's going to be a crisis, or a problem. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Correct. Cool. Tom, I don't know how to segue into this, but I was dying to ask you
sure.
about um the trade deal, the
Mm.
greatest trade deal ever, on concluded on the greatest golf course ever built in the history of the Milky Way galaxy.
He's hilarious, isn't he?
Yeah. What did you think of that?
I thought, huh, what a shock. We finally found out that
Yeah.
we finally found out that the European Union has no cards. No, I
Yes.
think he got to the point. I've been saying for a couple of days. You and I haven't spoken, but I have said this in a couple of other podcasts that I've done. Um, that isn't it interesting how Tulsi Gabbard went to London a couple of weeks ago, and then
Yes,
all
it
and
is
then all of a sudden
interesting.
everything has changed.
Yes. Yeah.
And
But
that's all. I think I can leave it there, and you can go with it from there. I think you'll
Tom,
pick up.
Do we know what Tulsi Gabbard did in London? Did she visit the CIA
Or
station in London? Did she go to see MI6, GCHQ, Foreign Office? We don't know.
I really don't know, because no one will report on it. All we
I
know is
see.
that she went.
She
And
just
when
went to London.
and when something like that happens and nobody says anything about it, that usually means something big happened that no
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
wants. You know what I mean? The absence of direct reporting is usually a tell that you know
Yes.
you know
Yes.
ultimatums were given. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
Because what I think is what I honestly what I think is that what she did, Alex, was she's got the goods on them on Obamagate, on the 2020 election, on the 2022 election, on probably even 2024, amidst and the biolabs in Ukraine, all the things that we think that we've all talked about and talked around. I think they're in the
Yeah.
hands. I think they're in the hands of a woman who was you know not working for them. and is not being a gatekeeper in an information siloer. And she's actually, and I've looked at some of this. Sundance and Conservative Treehouse have been doing great work to chronicle and inspire other people to chronicle what Gabbard is doing within the intelligence services, getting rid of and firing the people at the second and third tier who are all the information silos. They're giving everybody above them the plausible deniability to say, "Oh, there's nothing to see here. This is all a crazy Trump conspiracy." No, this shit's real. From what I can see, and from the reflections of that, that's what I think is going on. So
Yeah, I thought it was also extremely interesting. I mean, it's actually extraordinary. It's not just interesting that he didn't, Trump didn't go to 10 Downing Street
yes,
and he didn't go to Brussels.
nope,
He just summoned the president of the European Commission and the Prime Minister of Great Britain to his own private resort in Scotland, and they turned up like obedient lapdogs. And von der Leyen committed to the most humiliating kick in the crotch kind of deal. I mean, like just days before, all the Europeans were, oh no, the Europe, 450 million consumers, affluent, sophisticated, blah, 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 blah. At best, Trump is going to have to agree to a 0 for 0 tariff regime. And whoa, what an absolute humiliation she had to accept
yep,
on his golf course. He's like, come between my two golf games. We're gonna make this deal, and then, off you go, run along,
yeah.
Um,
And then he brings Keir Starmer to that same place on the U.S. on a U.S. helicopter. Okay, Starmer doesn't show up with on British in a British asset. He shows up on Trump's American helicopter and then has to bend the knee publicly. And Trump's got the friggin' I got a great shot of this of Starmer and his wife walking up to Trump, standing at the top of the stairs, walking up to the place, and it's a side shot. It's not behind Trump or to the or behind Starmer looking up to try and make Starmer look good or what? No, or from the top down trying to make Trump look bad. Oh no, it's very obvious. It is Trump is in charge. This guy is not. That's where the camera was placed. That's the optic, right? Um, the bunch of things I think are going on, Alex, and I'm going to throw a couple of them out at you, and I want you to riff off of them and see what you make of them. But my I've been suspecting this for a couple of months now, and which is that I think Trump is the grand plan here is to isolate the European Union and take the English Commonwealth back from the colonials. And he's, and what Starmer and von der Leyen are both doing is just trying to run interference for as long as possible to forestall that from happening. And
yeah,
I don't think they can get that done. Now, the one thing that is a little too easy or too pat about all this is that this happened. And then there's the way he's trying to force a resolution on Russia Ukraine the way he is. And, when I spoke to Martin Armstrong yesterday, Martin kept reiterating the point is like, look, war's coming, whether we like it or not. Everybody is gearing up for war across the entire continent. And the way the Russians have been prosecuting the war in Ukraine, they've been putting very little actual, top tier men and material into the conflict. They're mostly just fighting this as drones, 155 millimeter artillery shells, and and they're and just get and rotating troops through in order to get them battle hardened while they take some territory. So everybody is like gearing up for this potential conflict that's in the future, and the way Trump is acting right now, it feels it's clearly obvious that it's intended to make us feel like he's selling us out and he's going to get involved in the war that NATO wants. I'm still not convinced of this because of everything else that's being done, but I don't know, or is it possible that he's doesn't? It's such a it's such a stretch at this point to think that he's not in control after what he just did to von der Leyen and Starmer
Yeah.
and what he's doing to Obama, Brennan, Comey, and Clinton, and everybody else. And the way Gabbard is dripping out the information that she has, and she's using a classic Andrew Breitbart drip, 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 James O'Keefe style. Hey, we're going to introduce, here's 200 documents. Yeah, go ahead and respond to those and perjure yourself again. Here's 200 more documents that prove that you just perjured yourself yet again, which resets the statute of limitations on treason because you went
Yeah.
out in public and said something, you dumbass. Like there's this is like mob. This is classic mob politics at in a way that we've never seen before.
Yeah, I tend to agree, Tom. I think this is I don't know what his game is with respect to Russia, but the idea that he pivoted and that he now is going back to being the grand protector of Ukraine and the leader of the Western alliance against Russia, that just makes so little sense. I just don't even see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's too idiotic because the West is defeated. The West is defeated. Ukraine has been defeated.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me that just yesterday, so what's today is 1st of August. Yesterday, uh, apparently Putin ordered a massive offensive, and they mm, they launched the biggest ever drone and missile attack against Ukraine, something like more than 750 missiles on various targets in Ukraine, mostly Zaporozhye.
Mm-hmm.
And so stuff's going on, and I don't see that Trump changed because I don't know why he would. His since he got the big beautiful bill passed, his political standing is much, much more firm than it was before,
Yes.
to the point that he felt comfortable with the Epstein thing,
Mm-hmm.
which, to everybody it feels like a betrayal, and it is
Right.
kind of. But I always thought like this Epstein thing is it's just too big. There's no way they're gonna let that go because why did Epstein even bother with all that?
Right.
That's a lot of trouble to be uh, developing this extensive network of all these powerful people and putting together the compromat against them. Why would you even bother doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you would because it's an extremely, extremely powerful political weapon
Yes.
for whoever gets to wield it. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's in Trump's hand. Is he not going to wield it? Is he going to give it away? Because, like if it goes out in public, it's rendered useless, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer a weapon. You just like got all your powder wet.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and so I didn't think he was going to do it anyway. But I did think that it was going, some token heads were going to roll for, to, you know, to keep the public happy. And so where are we with that? Well, the the Russiagate documents, I think, are orders of magnitude bigger than uh, Epstein files.
Agreed.
Why? Because they go to the heart of the Western Alliance, which is basically, the Mordor is in the city of London. And I think that the Russiagate files are the kryptonite that that break
Mm-hmm.
that all apart. And then you know how it is in the two-tier justice system. They always even if you file lawsuits, they always they pressure people. They pressure lawyers, prosecutors, defense
Mm-hmm.
lawyers, jurors, judges. Uh, they bribe them, or they blackmail them, or they kill them. Remember, I forgot her name now. The judge who was assigned the anti-money laundering case against Deutsche Bank in New York.
Mm.
Remember what happened to her?
Yeah, no, I don't actually, Alex.
Well, they dispatched an assassin to her house who killed her husband, no, who killed her son and severely wounded her husband. And he didn't kill her
Mm-hmm.
because just randomly she decided to run a quick errand, like run over to 7-Eleven or something.
Right.
And so she survived the attack. But this is how they fight.
Yes.
And so you can't win by lawfare because the whole legal system has been set up to protect the ruling establishment.
Yes.
So if you're going to go into that fight, you're going to need something like the Epstein files,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to need to, this
Mm-hmm.
is, let's
Yeah, yeah,
face it,
yeah.
this is not Matlock. This is not Perry Mason world where,
Yeah.
you go, you prove your case, and then the judges rule fairly, and and
Right.
and
And
and people.
everybody has to like to accept the
Everybody has to
obviousness.
accept
Right.
because that's yes, exactly, the magical workings of the uncompromised judicial system. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work that way at all. So you do need that compromise if you're going to fight that fight and win. And so I think that's going to be the function of the Epstein files, and this is the reason why he didn't release them. And all that, all that, the Epstein files, the big beautiful bill, the 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 release of the Russiagate documents, all of that is making Trump more and more and more powerful.
Yes.
So why would who could possibly turn him away from what he decided to do anyway? And he decided to break away from the post-World War II global order, the
Yep.
rules-based global order,
Mm-hmm.
and to go in the direction of multipolar integrations.
Mm-hmm.
Why would he, now that he's in a much more powerful position than he was 2 months ago, why would he now pivot 180 degrees and make himself the errand boy of the British establishment? That doesn't make sense to me.
No.
And so that's why I don't believe it. And I think that all of this rhetoric is kind of like the same thing that we had in his first term with North Korea, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Between him and Kim Jong-un,
Yeah.
there was a period of time when it sounded really ugly, and you thought like, oh shit, he's
Yep.
gonna go bomb North Korea. And instead, he already had dispatched a delegation to Russia, sorry, to China
North Korea.
and
Yeah.
to South Korea to prepare for the talks, which
Yep.
happened then. And then we had the talks, and then the talks went really well, and he was the first president of the United States who went to the demarcation zone between
Yeah.
North and South Korea.
Yep.
And then the North and South Koreans agreed to start demining the
The DMZ.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so for a little while, everything looked really, really good, even though the rhetoric leading up to it was just awful.
Yes.
And so now I think we're in the stage where the rhetoric is going in the seemingly wrong direction, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it reflects on Trump's intention, because he
Right.
often does this.
Yes.
He trash talks this way and then he moves that way. We'll find out. I don't
Yes.
know.
Yeah. No,
It's
we,
it's
we
I
we
don't
should remain somewhat skeptical of that framework
Yes.
because it
Yes.
hasn't come to pass yet. We have some history as a guide, um, and we also now have things much more desperate on the part of the old European establishment. You know, the difference between then and now, Alex, and I'm sure you agree with me on this, is that he's won a lot of these fights. that they thought they were going to be able to extend and pretend. So now they're going to have to lay the next card on the table or the next card. And that means the potential for a false flag or something that's going to tie his hands that he can't, all the things that we've been worried about for the last year and a half, vis-a-vis Russia, Ukraine are now on the table. That much more so because of the potential of them being rolled completely. And this is the fear of this is the Martin Armstrong's fear, and it's worth considering. I'm not saying it's I assign your probability cloud to this however you want, but
Yeah.
these are scenarios you have to consider, right? Um, the things that give me hope on this behind the scenes are the little things that have happened that we didn't expect. Trump has lifted sanctions on Russian civilian nuclear energy development in the banking system across, so that the Russian banks can do the work necessary, because civilian nuclear is the means by which to also end the reliance on so much oil going around the world, and all of this stuff. So allow Asia to come out of the 19th century and begin the process of building a proper electrical grid across the and allow that to happen. And that's a big deal. That's a very, very big deal. And again, one of the things that I haven't spoken to you about this. I've spoken I've mentioned to other people about 3 months ago. I think it was just before Israel Iran and the quote unquote 12-day war. Dexter White and I were having a conversation behind privately, and he said, it's beginning to feel like Putin and Trump don't necessarily trust each other, and they shouldn't, because they shouldn't trust each other, but they each have a parallel to-do list. Like, I've got, these things that I'm going to get done, and we agree that these are the 5 things that we're each going to try and get done. And as long as we keep knocking things off the list, we can then we can get to a point where we can get to a point where then we can create some kind of an agreement.
Right.
And now the question is, has either of them gotten off task or been forced off task or whatever? And it's a big question. I don't know, but I wonder, if, Trump bombed Iran, right, which he's supposedly not supposed to do. And in the wake of the bombing of Iran and the quote unquote, and the end really of that conflict, which was, which we're all should be for the most part thankful for, it's still simmering. And I still think London is trying to gin up a conflict again. I'm not saying it's over. It's just it's been brought down to a more manageable level. But after that is when Putin started the more intense bombing campaign against Kiev. So the question is, did Trump betray Putin's to-do list by bombing Iran and greenlighting the attack by Israel, and now Putin saying, look, I don't know what to do with this guy. I need to assert facts on the ground in Ukraine that are necessary. The other side of that is that, look, it's the summer in Ukraine. If you're going to do a military campaign, this is when you do it, in order to take the territory that's necessary. You have 4 or 5 months or 6 months where you can actually do, warfare. And this is just the reality of life, of the geography of central Ukraine. So, or east of the Dnieper River. So there are all these little things that are to be factored into these discussions. But I don't know. Like, Trump's new tariff schedule that he put out today is very aggressive on the countries that did not make a deal. I think that there's the people really worried about what he's doing with India. And I wonder, I don't have a good read on some of this stuff at this point. I wish I did. So
Well, I don't think
maybe you
anybody.
do. So.
I don't think anybody does, Tom.
Okay.
That's the whole point. His I think as we've discussed in the past, and you've discussed it with Ian Burlingame, and I have also.
Mm-hmm.
Trump's at war, actually. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and how do you wage war? You wage it by deception.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if I'm reading this correct, he's taking on the most powerful people in the world.
Yes.
And so your deception has to be damn convincing. Otherwise, it's not deception. So that pretty much says it that you can't read him correctly. And if you read based on the public statements and disclosures that are coming out for everybody's, it's almost certainly not going to be correct.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
No,
obvious that
absolutely.
what they're giving out in public is the deception, is the psyop.
Hmm.
So if you know, take the example of the tariffs. He wants to introduce tariffs anyway. That's his that has been his objective for forever because part of his mission is to reindustrialize the United States, to bring manufacturing back.
Hmm.
And so if you're going to bring manufacturing back, you want to introduce tariffs because you want to protect the American industries, American market, right?
Hmm.
And
Agree.
so he's using the political hot button issues of the day to justify that. Because everybody can agree that we should hate the Chinese, we should hate the Russians, we should hate everybody who's trading with them.
Hmm.
So make it simple. I'm going to use that sentiment to justify doing what I've already intended to do anyway. And I
Hmm.
don't have to explain it in any more complex terms than just saying, oh, you're trading with the Russians. Well, we're going to slap sanctions on you. We're going to slap tariffs on you. You're you're trading with the Chinese. We're going to do this to you. It doesn't matter. You're Brazil, China, India, whoever. We're going to punish you. And everybody who thinks that they should hate India and China and Russia is going to say like, yeah, right? Yeah, maybe. Well, sounds good anyway. Yeah, to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
Trump.
right.
You know?
On the other side of it, he knows full well that he can't enforce those sanctions anyway.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
they're unenforceable. But when I thought about this, I'm like, you know, the Chinese buy Russian oil off the Espo pipeline that goes to the Kamchatka Peninsula and at the Port Cosmo, and then there's a coffee and cake run between there and the Chinese coast. What are we going to do? Resort to piracy in Russian and Chinese international and Chinese national waters or whatever? We're gonna resort to piracy to enforce these sanctions? Like, of course not. Um, if and with the remittance for those oil payments not even going through Swift, like again, that's your argument. The same, and in many ways, the same thing is happening for and or with India as well. So like I look at this and I say there's something else at play as to why he's pressuring India the way he is. And
Yeah,
I would make the argument that he's trying to get India not to break with the BRICS, but to break with the Brits. That the
yeah,
old issue, this is just popping into my head now. I'm just vamping now, so I'm gonna throw it back to you in a second. But there's an old network of influence in India, and India is constantly. It's like Turkey. Like they constantly like walk back and forth between, oh, we're part of the West, no, we're part of the East, no, we're part of the West, no, we're part of the East. Can I need a deal, I need a deal, I need a deal, I need a deal. Turks and Indians, they're I hate to sound racist here or anything, but that's kind of the way they operate. And normally this is what they do. And you had Erdogan, for example, last week saying it's imperative, excuse me, it's imperative that we join the EU immediately. Why?
yeah,
What's he trying to do? Like, and
yeah.
so it's like Erdogan is looking more and more unstable in Turkey.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
And Modi has to basically put up or shut up. Who do you work for? And you can, and I think the deal that Trump would be maybe putting in front of him, you can, is look, dude, you can straddle the world between East and West all you want, but you don't get to do it through City of London.
right. Yeah, 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 yeah. Tom, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Uh, do you reckon that the war of words between Trump and Powell, Jay Powell,
Hmm.
is real or is it theater?
It's a bit of both.
Uh-huh.
What I think is going on is the following: um, that Powell is the guy who was brought in by Wall Street and by the American, as I've always said, brought in by that group of people to implement SOFR, get us off of LIBOR, remove the center of American financial power back on shore. I do not necessarily believe, and to shrink the balance sheet and to try and undo the sins of the Biden administration under COVID and really the Trump administration under COVID. Um, he is not the guy and does not want to be the guy to shepherd the reforming of the Fed, which is desperate and needs to be done. So he's a convenient pincushion here. Now, literally, as you and I have been speaking, the latest, manufacturing PMI, employment data, construction spending, all that stuff just hit the news wire, and it's all bad. Like it's a
Yeah,
sea
it's
of
all
red.
bad. Yeah, I saw that.
It's
Yeah.
all it's all bad. It's all red, right? So, you know, is Powell too late? Should he have cut rates the other day? Probably. Is he going to cut rates after Jackson Hole? Yes, is what he's going to do. Powell's going to finally acquiesce to um, changing monetary policy, and he's going to do so with his speech at Jackson Hole, is what I suspect. And he may even go so far as to fall on his sword and say it's time to move forward. But what Trump is really doing is setting the narrative to the normies, because you and I are not normies. Our audiences are not normies. We're all like way off, way ahead of the curve on all of this stuff. And that's the niche that we operate in. And that's the audience that we've curated and cultivated. And it makes sense. And it's also why there's so much anxiety, right, within our communities and the feedback that we get. I certainly get. But for the rest of the world, they don't even know that the Federal Reserve exists, right? They have some vague idea of what the Fed is and what it does and everything else. And what is Trump doing? He's literally just showing that it's just another corrupt government organization or quasi government organization, while he's getting ready to wrest control of monetary policy and of fiscal policy and put it back under the purview of the Treasury. But you have to
Right.
set the political agenda, and you've got to seed this into the narrative, because he's got to put a Fed chair in that replaces Powell, that is not part of Fed culture, which is decidedly one, anti-Trump, two, left, beholden to Democrats and globalists, and all of that. And the culture inside the Fed is bad. And Powell was never able to, or maybe he never even tried to reform it at all. I don't know.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
this is
Right.
something that Caitlin Long and I discussed yesterday in the previous episode to the podcast. So for people who are interested in that, they should listen to Caitlin's, because she's got a very different take than I do on this. So, but I presented this to her, and she's like, oh, "Yeah, you might be right about that." So you set the narrative that way, because what if Trump really wants to go off the board? What if he wants to put somebody in his FOMC chair that isn't part of Fed culture? What if he does want to put Judy Shelton in as Powell's replacement? Is you think he's going to get that through this current Senate before the midterms without a fight? You think they're not gearing up for that fight in every way, manner, shape, or form? You know what I mean? Like, it makes sense that if he is attempting to do something along those lines and go outside of that culture and not promote from within, that and that would be consistent with everything else that we're seeing. So that's what I think in the broad scheme of things. And yeah, and Powell's going to have to probably cut 50 basis points in September.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting because Powell got nominated by Trump,
Yes.
and Powell managed basically the return of American monetary policy back to the United States where it belongs, which is for for the everyday person. doesn't even register on the radar, but it's the most it's one of the most important, if not the most important, um how do you call it?
Events.
Elements of your sovereignty. The
Hmm.
ability to manage your monetary policy, because without it, you cannot manage your economic policy. And that they wrestled away from the City of London.
Agreed.
So Powell has done an enormously important job there. He's played an
Yes.
enormously important role there. And what I wonder is, how did they even know to do that? You know,
I don't think
of
Trump was.
course, when you
I don't think Trump was briefed on that plan back in 2017.
so
I
you
don't
don't
think.
think that Trump was even in the loop.
No, no, I do not. I think
Okay.
that's why my argument's always been that Wall Street handed him Powell, and Trump said, "Yeah." Like he talks about it all the time. He's like, "Yeah, they recommended this guy Powell to me. I went with the recommendation, and he's turned out to be terrible." And why? Because Donald Trump likes to is a borrower, not a lender, right?
Yes,
In
yes,
classics,
yes.
and that's why he and Powell have always been at odds. But I think that the commercial banking interests of the United States and the sovereigntist wing of the United States. And that's probably how they were able to get this to Trump. He's like, look, no, Powell's a good guy. He's an American, and he's gonna help us. And that was going to have to be good enough for Trump in early 2017, not knowing any better. And then all the other evidence is very clear that the Obama wing of the American political system tried to get rid of him and tried to make sure
Yeah,
that he didn't get a second term. City of London tried to wrestle all that back and kill Sofer in the crib, right? Um, and or at least if they
of
didn't,
course, they
if
would,
not
wouldn't they?
kill it,
Yeah.
at least control it, right?
Okay, so here's why I'm bouncing this off of you, because I
Sure.
have a very vague notion of all this, but I think that ballpark, I might be on the right track. So I just want your confirmation.
Sure.
So all that being the case, that would imply that actually the resistance to the City of London, to the European colonialist oligarchies, is actually coming from Wall Street, or at least part of Wall Street, right?
Yes. Yes.
Ah, okay.
That's been my
Because,
thesis.
like,
That's been my thesis for a while. That there's
yeah,
certain banks that are, and there are certain banks that are not.
are not, yes. Okay. And so which ones are? It looks to me like JP Morgan is.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell who else, but because I can see that Bank of America is not.
Correct.
They're not. Citigroup is not.
Yes, I've always put City in the I'm not sure category because they're so. I think their balance sheet is so impaired that they, even if they wanted to get out from underneath it, they can't. So I've always put City on the
Okay.
fulcrum, right? They could go either way.
Okay. Okay. And uh, what's been surprising to me, but I can't, like, I don't have enough dots to connect like a coherent picture.
Sure.
Like some of the statements coming from Jamie Dimon, I would think he'd get fired for that, but he's not getting fired for that. Because
Mm-hmm.
like he's making particularly unbanker-like statements
Yes, he is.
and he's getting away with it,
Mm-hmm.
which tells me that there's got to be some critical mass of that financial power who's saying, we're on the freaking road to perdition.
Yes.
We got to turn course,
Mm-hmm.
because it can't be just Trump.
No, no.
He's too small. He's too weak. There's got to be a bigger power behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And I identified that bigger power initially with some European banks, one particularly.
Go ahead.
One particularly, but that's just one. There's got to be more. Okay. Anyway, so you confirmed some very vague ideas I had, but
I can add some more color to that. What I've always said was, and I have said this before. I don't know if you and I've talked about it, and if I did mention this to you in the past, Alex, there's so much stuff that we've talked about that it may have just.
yeah.
And you know how I like to shotgun the fucking world, right? I've always identified it as J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and probably Wells Fargo are on Team America, and Wells because of their extreme exposure to domestic housing. On the other side, you would have BOFA, Bank of America, Bank of New York Mellon, and possibly Citigroup, and a couple of the other banks, so Republic Bank and other ones. That's where I would. That's kind of the layout.
The
And
Civil War.
yeah, the Civil War, and BOFA is definitely the snake in the garden up on Wall Street, wholly aligned. And I think again, it's either because they're all in on this stuff, um, and they're tied in deeply with Deutsche Bank um, and or like ING and
Well,
those guys.
they're also the controlling interest in BlackRock.
Yes, and yeah, so
George
BlackRock stays, of
Osborne, Friedrich Merz, all of these people who suddenly are running the show in Europe.
course. But I do believe that that's kind of where we are on all of this, and Diamond has absolutely been. I've been saying for a long time that during the Yellen Treasury days, really Jamie Dimon was the real Secretary of State for the United States, trying to undo all the damage that Anthony Blinken was doing while he was running around the world. Everywhere, whenever Blinken went somewhere, Diamond seemed to show up about 2 months later or 6 weeks later to like calm everything down, especially with China, by the way.
Right,
Um,
right.
and remember, the Diamond is also setting up his succession at J.P. Morgan. Right, he's getting
Huh.
ready to retire, and his succession plan that was an interesting talking point of about a year ago, when he put out his succession plan, and there were a couple of names on the list, one in particular that um, weren't in his plans, and the big one was Mary Erdos, who um, who he brought to Davos the last time, by the way, and that's a kind of a keep your friends close and your enemies closer kind of thing. Because
Okay.
Erdos and there's somebody else, I can't remember the person he was working with, but they're the ones that ran J.P. Morgan's Epstein accounts.
Oh.
Yeah, just
Hmm.
just throwing it out there, like
Yeah.
because
Interesting.
and you think that Epstein and Diamond. Like, this is part of the reason why I got really angry with Whitney Webb when they filed that stupid Epstein related lawsuit out of Puerto Rico about JP Morgan, and they immediately tried to do the guilt by association, saying that Diamond was the one handling that, and then of course people just ran with it as a guilt by association thing, and I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't track. Like, Jamie Dimon didn't. I doubt he even ever met Jeffrey Epstein, to be honest with you, because what did Epstein? How much money did Epstein actually have? Ever run through? And he had bank accounts with everyone. So it's like,
Yeah.
and that's cover for status kind of thing, as Ian Burlingame
Right.
would put. You have bank accounts with everyone in order to be able to then when you burn that guy, you be able to use him and the guilt by association thing to try and make that stuff stick. So
Right.
while when you go back in the history on that, there was a moment where it became very obvious that um, London slash the Colonials' plans for the legislative session had failed. I think it was right after Build Back Better failed or whatever. That's when that came out, like right on schedule. And I was like, oh, look, right on schedule. I theorized that it was Diamond with his hand on the back, on the shoulder of Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, who killed Build Back Better, saying, don't worry about it. We've got you covered. You say no to this bill. You're not letting this out of the Senate.
Right.
And then that's when the whole Epstein Diamond thing got thrown out there, and then it was chummed in the waters, and the people who frankly just don't have the, they, and I don't even blame people like Whitney Webb for running with the story because, well, I mean, it's good copy and it's worth some money and it's worth chasing down. But until you understand how all of this stuff works, you
Yeah,
know,
don't hang anybody just yet.
right? Don't hang anybody. Just said you really need to do some. There's a bigger picture here than you're grasping at, and that's the and it's funny. Like when that was happening, I found it. I found the silence that I'm not saying that I should be on everybody's guest on their podcast, but knowing full well that I'm the guy, like the only guy talking about this stuff at the time, the fact that I didn't get called by a variety of people on this issue speaks volumes. That's all I'm going to
Yeah.
say. You know what I mean? Even if it was just a DM, like somebody would reach out to me and go, dude, what do you think about this? I would have been like, this is what I think. And vapor. And you don't have to like go on their show or anything like that. But like I get DMs from people all the time that ask me questions about this. And I'm sure you do as well, right? What do you think about what's going on here, Alex? Like, I don't know. Like and when you don't get those calls, you get those texts or those emails or whatever at the where we are in at the level that we're at. But that in and of itself is notable, right? So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense to me. Well, it's getting interestinger and interestinger,
Yes, yeah, that's
isn't
that's one way of putting it, right? But the real goal is monetary reform because
Yes.
monetary reform is how we get back to all the things you talked about so eloquently at the beginning of the podcast. And it's funny. I said to you before we started recording, when we were in Calgary, and I heard you, constantly having to like beg off to be social and hang out with us and whatnot because you're like, no, I have to go back to work, and I'm like, dude, it's 11 o'clock at night. What the fuck are you doing working? And I said, Alex, no, you can't do this because I remember what that was like
Yeah, yeah,
when
yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah.
really building the business out and you can't sacrifice yourself. One of the things that I've been told by many people, many of my subscribers, certainly by Dexter White, my wife, and others, is that look, you can't sacrifice your body for this. You're valuable to us. We want you here for the long term. And it was said to me, and it was very touching. And it was something that, when I came back from Calgary and I was talking to my therapist about this, and I said, this is odd. I finally felt for the first time in my life that I had people around me who actually cared about my existence beyond my wife and my best friend, which is, that were looking out
Yeah.
for me. I've never had that. And all I can say is, as your friend and as your podcast partner, my friend, I want you here for the long term. You're too valuable to all of us to burn yourself out. So find the right balance and be here for this, and so that you can be there for your boys.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we're working on that too.
Good, 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 good. No, I know, and it was really hard for me. I'll tell you, when I first stopped, when things got a little easier, right after I got rehired by Newsmax and a couple other things, I felt so guilty not working 14 hours a day. I'm like,
Oh, right.
I
Right.
felt so guilty. I'm like, there's this thing happening that I know people like, and I felt a responsibility and a burden. But slowly but surely, I was able to quell that, and then I started instituting the 24-hour rule, and now it's kind of the 72-hour rule. Something weird happens, I'm going to wait 72 hours before I comment on it because it seems that
Ah,
as things get crazier, the more time you take to digest it, less talking, more thinking, or more reflecting,
yes.
the better
The better
the
your
better our
conclusion.
commentary
Yes,
is.
yes, yes, yes. I have to say, I also resist jumping on stories that just broke, even if I have a strong opinion of them, because, so many times if you let a day or two or three lapse, you come to a different conclusion than you initially thought was the case.
Yeah, it's
But
hard,
anyway,
and it's very hard when people are asking you for your take on these things. This is we're talking about this here. I'm bringing this up now because it's very important. It's something that the Dexter and I have identified as as we go forward, we have to be I mean, this new media space that exists in order, they're trying to get us to replicate the old 6 o'clock news, and the podcast space becomes the new 6 o'clock news. We don't want to be there. That's not where our value is to anyone. That's a recipe for disaster. When we're in learning,
Right.
when we're like, if you're in really intense learning mode, I know when I was doing Brexit, I was covering Brexit every day, like 2 or 3 times a day. I was doing that publicly because I was trying to figure out what was going on, and I wanted the interaction
You
with
wanted
the
feedback.
world,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right,
yeah.
in real
Yeah.
time to like disabuse me of my notions of what I thought was going on. But as you get older, as you've got a good basis underneath, it's almost like you're trying to alleviate your imposter syndrome that you're feeling. Like, you know what I mean? You're trying to like, I want to be better at this. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to interface with people who know things that I don't know as much as
Right,
possible.
right,
Right.
right.
And now as you get older and you've got more experience, you can just, you can take a step back, think about it a little bit, and chat. So
Yeah,
sound
good
good?
stuff. Good stuff. Yes.
So with that said, Mr. Krainer, as always, lovely to talk to you. Let everybody know where you can be found and all the happy jazz, and have a great weekend.
Likewise, Mr. Longo. Always good to join you. Always good to have my mind expanded, broadened. How do they say?
Sure.
Um, yeah, I have two publications on Substack. One of them is called iSystem Trend Compass, a daily trend following newsletter. The other one is a personal Substack called Alex Krainer's Substack, where I publish a bit less frequently, but let's say maybe more thoroughly researched and somewhat more refined texts. And I'm active on X. My handle is @NakedHedge, and that's about it. I have other stuff, but easy enough to find from there.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I am TFL 1728 on X. You will find Alex and I doing the thing on a daily basis. So if you, and of course, Patreon/Gold Goats and Guns if you want to sign up for the newsletter or anything else. So with that said, we're out. This is the end of episode 226, which I never actually identified at the beginning of the podcast, but hey, the conversation did what it did. Alex, you have a great weekend. We'll talk soon, my friend.
You too. Take care. Bye bye.
All right. Keep your stick on the ice, folks.